Wednesday, October 8th has arrived with the moon having fulfilled herself, and I get images of Lauren Bacall perhaps retiring now to that chaise lounge in her boudoir after a passionate and stormy night with Humphrey Bogart down there in Key Largo, very sweaty and kind of a wet and passionate night for the goddess that gives us these cyclar events in our lives. So I think Bogey's probably over in the corner having a cigarette, and Lauren is luxuriating on that chaise lounge with a cocktail after a torrid night. And that's basically my encapsulation of this full moon. We did in fact have a grand trine in fire going on in association with the passage of the moon. We had Mars in Sagittarius, the roaming masculine image that would like to leave something lasting in this world, so spreading its seed. We have Jupiter, very, very expansive down there in Leo. We have Uranus in Aries, kind of an unexpected passage. So fascinating filling out of the moon as we're approaching the middle part of autumn and beginning to notice a cool down in temperatures and colors in the trees. The leaves are all changing very, very rapidly now. So we were told, and I'm sure that it is in fact true, that this full moon gave us a lunar eclipse, and so I was contemplating that and asking Spirit for an insight as to exactly what the eclipse is all about. And my little inner voice immediately piped up and said, Jacob Raub. And so I went and picked up a copy of his book, Who Told You That You Were Naked? And I immediately got the idea or the impression the Spirit was offering me on this one. I thought it was kind of cool. Basically, when we're looking at the moon, as it has attained fullness, you have this bright, pristine, shiny object in the night sky reflecting the sun at its full intensity. And then an eclipse comes, a shadow falls across the moon. And what does that mean? What does that signify? And my first thought, after referencing Mr. Raub's work, and he was a Trappist monk also. If you'll recall the last video, I mentioned Thomas Merton, who was a Trappist monk who was down in Kentucky at Gethsemane Monastery. And Jacob Raub was also at that same monastery, both very, very enlightened, very un-Catholic in so many ways. But nonetheless, the idea of guilt and the burdens of guilt, there you are, radiating light, reflecting the light of God consciousness, feeling empowered, moving through life, and really enjoying the moment-to-moment experience. And all of a sudden, a shadow comes across your consciousness. You're not even able to really identify it. It's just very subtle. But perhaps that shadow is lingering guilt, and maybe it's time with this full moon passage to look within quite deeply and address the idea of, do I feel guilty, and why am I feeling guilty? And Raub, in his book, examined things from that early part of the book of Genesis in the Bible. And of course, as we know, the Bible can be a source of true inspiration, but it can also be a source of confusion and turmoil and dismay. But in the early chapters, we're told that Adam and Eve got together and had some fun in the garden, and then they immediately felt guilty. And so, in association with that, they were feeling shame, and they wrapped themselves up in fig leaves, as many illustrators have given us the image. So when God was walking in the garden, hanging out with his creation, he encounters Adam and Eve and says, "Why are you wearing clothes? Why are you wearing leaves? Why are you hiding yourselves?" And they say, "Lord, we were naked." And God immediately is kind of taken aback and says, "Well, who told you that you were naked?" And that really is the way the ego in its own insidious way works. It's a repository of guilt and anger and shame, and it finds anything that it can to attach guilt to us with, and it is a burdensome thing, and we carry these shadows of guilt with us over decades, throughout our entire lifetime. Idiotic situations that happened when we were 12 or 15 or 22 or 35 that becomes a burden that we take with us to the grave. And is this really God's desire for us? Well, the interesting little paradox around guilt is that if you want to get rid of the burden, you have to be able to allow yourself a certain level of self-forgiveness. You can cast it off. You can say, okay, that was a moment in time. It no longer has power over me. But the only way that that's really going to work out for you is if you forgive those around you for every screw-up that they have contributed to your life. So in order to be able to give, you have to be able to receive. And conversely, in order to be able to receive, you have to be willing to give. So if you would like to receive a sense of release, a sense of forgiveness from all of those silly moments in time that were fleeting, that no longer have power over us, then you have to be willing to go to that position in your own mind's eye of complete and total forgiveness for all of the elements, all of the circumstances, and all of the conditions that others have brought into your life. So it's an interesting kind of balancing process going on here, and of course this is very appropriate for Libra time. We're always looking to get the scales balanced out. And that's true with everything in this material universe. It's all based on duality, and the trick is to balance the duality. So as we are able to forgive those around us, we can forgive ourselves, and we can release those attachments to the past and expunge that shadow that falls across the moon as the eclipse occurs. So think about what's happened over the last few days, and ponder the possibilities that with this eclipse you were feeling a little bit of a shadow of guilt or shame or regret, remorse, and perhaps the way to step aside from that is to forgive those around you and to go within yourself and ask for forgiveness from that divine element that lives within all of us. So, kind of a fun shift as we're moving now further and further toward this coming new moon that's going to be arriving in the intense sign of Scorpio. And I'm sure there will be multiple visions and insights that will come to all of us as we're in this autumnal season and observing the passage of the sun and the moon and the stars. So that's your message for this full moon in Aries as the sun is bouncing its way through the sign of Libra, and we're moving now deeply into the autumnal process as the leaves descend around us. So get out there and share the love, pass the love around, and if you enjoyed this video, please do share it. I'd like to get things out there on the net a little bit more visibly, so any assistance you can give me on that level would be immensely appreciated. And keep this thought in the back of your mind as you move through this coming week. I will forgive those around me as I receive that forgiveness for myself. So have a fabulous week, and I will be chatting with you soon.
When they yo, no.